Hello lovely people, I'm K3 and welcome to Wonky Wednesday. This week I want to have another play with combining cloth and paper, and I thought of doing a log cabin inspired in that it's lights and darks and it's strips, but weaving. Now I've just spent a fruitless half hour looking for my glue stick, and then I remembered I'd given it to my daughter. So ideally you would need a glue stick. I'm going to have to use this wet glue. I don't know if it's going to work. We'll see. So I've got some strips of paper, and my square is going to be about 5 1/4 inches. So I've cut my strips 3/4 of an inch wide. So I've gone with 4 darks, which these are just some offcuts of black craft paper. So I've got 4 3/4 inch wide by 5 1/4 inch long black, and 3, this is paper that's tea dyed from an old sketchbook. So 3 of those, and then with the cloth I've gone the other way. So I've got 3 black and 4, tea dyed strips of cloth. So let's see if this works without a glue stick. I think the easiest thing is to lay the cloth out, because cloth's flexible, and then weave the paper into it. Other people might have other ideas. Maybe it's because I'm more used to working with cloth. So I want them all sort of butted up. And then I'm going to use this weird glue thing. I don't even know who bought it. It was not I. And use a tiny little dab. And I'm going to weave the cream ones first, all 3, and then the black ones at the bottom. So let's put a tiny dab on here. I just hope it dries quick. I just hope it comes out, for starters. Just got to talk amongst yourselves where I get my glue to work. I'll poke it with a needle. Seems to. Now my needle's got glue on it. I just want to put the tiniest bit, because I don't want to. Come on, out you come. Tiniest little smear, because I do want to be able to stitch as well. I don't know what this is like for stitching through. So I'm going to, oh no, I've put glue on the wrong side. Well, I'll put it underneath. So I'm going to put that under and stick that cloth on to the top. And then the next one, I'm going to do the other way. So it's just a tiny little dot. It's just to hold it all together, so I can pick it up and stitch. Whoops. And I think once I've got the first row on like this, the next row I'll be able to actually sort of weave more. So then this one needs to go on the top, and I need to make sure I can fit them all on as well. So a tiny dab on this side, and then just flip that back and put a little dab on the back. That's a lot of a dab. Yeah, really use a glue stick. would be my recommendation if you haven't given it away. Whoops. And my daughter started journaling, which is lovely. So hence I gave her, I got together a little package of journaling type supplies for her, and one of the things I gave her was my one and only glue stick. I need to get another one. And this Wonky Wednesday, so doesn't matter if it's not entirely square. In fact, it's not gonna be. That one's sticking off the end already. Right, so that's line 1. So line 2, I want something to stand my glue in, but I don't want it to go everywhere. I'll just do it there, and if it goes all over my cutting mat, then I can clean it afterwards. So then the next one's obviously going to weave the other way, so I can now flip these ones up. And I'm not entirely sure I need glue at every junction this time. I might just put glue on the end bits. So I'm going to flip those up. Whoops, there's my glue falling over. Lay that on somewhat centrally. I'm just going to put glue where the ones are coming down. And I think if I just do that from every alternate row, hopefully, she said, it'll do, pig. It'll stay put. Stick. You see that glue is splurging through to the good side, but one has to work with what one has. So now I'll flip the other ones, the alternate ones up, and do the same thing again. And get the next bit of cream. You could alternate, obviously, the strips in, and then you get a more checkerboard effect. My square's going really unsquare. I don't really want to get in there with my fingers because then I'll get gluey fingers, but really that's what I should do, I think. Just making sure they're all butted. Yeah, do you see if you did this with all alternate darks and lights, you'd get a checkerboard, but I wanted to see how it would look if I did it so I had a light area and a dark area and two checkerboards. So now I need to flip up the alternate ones, hold the other two out of the way. Am I in shot? Yes, good. And so that one's going to go there. Push it right up. Oh, the other thing I've got, I don't know if I mentioned it, is a little square of red to do my centre, my hearth square. Because I really loved in, I think it was the first piece I put in my journal, the paper and cloth log cabin. I just loved the combination of the paper and the cloth. So I wanted to have another go at combining them. There we go, and another black strip. Butt it right up. Somewhat straight. Tiny little, hardly any glue. Come on. That's the only problem with paper is you can't really pin, because the minute you put a pin in, you make a hole. You could clip maybe. My glue's all dry now. Oops, no, that's too much. I'm going to have to use my finger because that's too much. It's not solvent-based glue, it's water-based, I did check. I'll start sticking my fingers in it. There we go. And you see the little dots of glue, hopefully won't show when it's dry. I know how to fit 2 more strips in there. And my spacing's a bit off, but never mind. So lay that one on. Oh no, that's 2, we don't want 2. The other thing, I did check this paper before, because this black paper, this craft paper is quite thick. I checked it with a needle that it will sew. I mean, if you get really thick paper, you can always make a little hole. You know, make yourself guide holes to stitch through. Even really thick cardboard, you can punch holes. Or make holes with an awl if you've got an awl. There's usually a way to stitch through paper, but I'd checked on this. To squeeze that one on there. Right, I'm going to have to do it differently because I don't think they'll stay up. I might have to do them one at a time. Like this. Am I still in shot? Yeah. You see that I don't try these things first. I just come straight in and go for it. And it works or it doesn't. And you see it either way. Oops, come on. There we go. Last bit. Now I just need to get some glue on that last little strip. But do you see that my spacing's completely off? What I should have done is made them longer and then trim them back afterwards if I wanted to have them more even. Right, come on, behave yourselves. There we go. One more. Tiny dab there. Now I can get rid of the sticky glue. So I just need that to dry a little bit. Whoops, go on up there. Which is going to just have to be time because I don't have a heat gun or anything like that. So I shall let that dry and then I'll come back. But I must say, I do quite like that it's dark here and light here and the checkerboard there and there. I think it's quite cool. So I'll let it dry and then I'll be back to do some stitching into it. Okay, I think it's dry enough. I can still see the little dots of the glue, but you know, it is what it is. So I think what I'm going to do is I just want to do a line of stitching through every you know, strip. I think I'm going to do, where there's the black cloth or paper, I'm going to do a line of black, and then the same with the cream going the other way. So basically I'll be repeating the weave but with the thread. So I've got 2 strands of, it's some vintage darning cotton, slightly thinner than, what do you call it, the other stuff, embroidery floss. So I'm probably going to have to stab stitch. I think I'm going to start, I'll just start on the edge. I'm just going to come up from the back. I've got a knot and get through this paper, which is a bit thick, but it did work when I tried it before. Yes, I wouldn't want to try going in and out because it's not flexible enough. And if you want to see exactly where you're coming through from the back rather than just poking around, there I'm going to come in between the two, so I'll be all right. You can make a little hole from the front, but I think I'm just going to go for it and it'll come up where it comes up. I can feel, and yeah, it works okay. I quite like stitching through paper. There's just something about it. Not when you get a knot. There's just something about it, the sound it makes, and something satisfying about it. Obviously you couldn't really make paper things to use, you know, like bags, or certainly not quilts or anything like that. But that's why it's nice to have stitch journals and things, so you can play with things like this. Oh dear, I don't want you yet, go way over there. You can play and experiment. Whoops. But it's holding up, not too badly with that glue. And you could do any kind of stitching you wanted, really. I like the idea when you've done a cloth weave. We did cloth weaving as week 1 of the stitch project, the weekly, you know, the Monday, which was community. See, now I'm into the other paper and it's much thinner. And it's lovely to create weavings with cloth and then do the stitching over the top both ways to echo the weaving, because then your stitches weave as well. Turn it around, I think. Hear that sound that it makes as it comes through the paper. And then when I get to the end, I'm just going to jump across on the back and come back the other way. And I haven't planned that very well because I'm going to go down there and end up here, and I actually want to be there, but anyway. And I did just feel the glue there. That strange glue. But I don't think there's a way of doing it without glue. Whoops, well, I've come in the wrong place, but So now I've got a hole, but it's on behind the cloth, so. Yeah, because obviously when you stitch cloth, sorry, frog in my throat today. When you stitch cloth, if you put a pin or a needle through, the cloth heals again, but paper doesn't. Or some cloth doesn't. But it's interesting to me at least, to pay attention to materials when you're working with them to see how they react to what you do. There's like a conversation with the materials. Like you say, well, I'm going to do that, and then the material says, well, if you're going to do that, this is how I'm going to react. And then you can say, well, that's okay, so I'll go on because I'm happy with your reaction. Or you can say, well, I'm not sure I like that, so I'm going to have to treat you differently. Back into the thick paper. Oops. And obviously when you stitch paper you don't get that sort of... Now, do you see what I've done? I've hopped right over there, but there's a hole, so I'm going to have to just go with it and be wonky. Now there's a whole conversation you can have with materials while you're working, in your head or out loud. A lady asked me recently if I'm working alone, if I talk to myself. Well, I don't often talk out loud to myself, although sometimes I do. I think many of us do. Oh, there's glue and a thick paper. There we go, I'm through. But I do have conversations in my head with whatever it is I'm working on usually. Or you know, if you're doing something, I don't like to say mindless because I don't mean mindless, I suppose I mean more mindful. But if I'm stitching on my scrolls, for example, where I'm just doing straight lines up and down, and then you just let your mind wander, that's why I call them meditation scrolls. Because I find that if I'm doing something with my hands, something repetitive, then my thoughts are free to wander, but that happens then. See, I'm going to show you the thing because I don't want to be wonky for some reason. So you just make a hole like that, and then if you look on the back, you can't see because it's cloth. If it was paper, you could obviously see the hole on the back. Now I'm committed to that hole. Found it. So I'm not going to do that again, I'm just going to be wonky. If it's wonky, it's wonky. I think that's the same with any crafting. You know, I knit and crochet as well, with those two things. You can just let your mind wander. And I find, at least for myself, speaking for myself, that my mind then wanders in a pleasant way. And, you know, I don't start worrying about things or thinking about things I don't want to think about. Whereas if you just sit doing nothing, your thoughts are more erratic, a life of their own more, I don't know. I hope it's understandable what I'm trying to say. I wonder, there must be some kind of reason for that, if it's a thing and it's not just me. There must be a connection between when you're doing a meditative, repetitive task and how your brain then responds to that. I'm going to have to end that off now, and because I'm in the wrong place. So to end off on paper, I'm going to go back through my previous stitch, because obviously you can't take a back stitch into the paper on the wrong side, and then go through my loop a couple of times and pull it up. And then I can then take a back stitch into that handy bit of cloth that's laying there, just to anchor it. So now I just want to do some more lines of black through where there's black. I'll get one line out of that. I shall use it up. In fact, I won't. I'll put it in the aughts and get the other bit, because I think then the other bit should be long enough then for 4 lines. So it's the other half of the 4 strands. And I'm just using a normal, my normal tulip size 9, I think it is, might be an 8. So I'm going to start here, somewhere in the middle of that strip-ish. Oops, got hold of the knot. I've pulled a thread of the cloth through to the other side, and I'll sort that out later. Stella. My husband Hans has gone away to work for the week, and so it's just me and Stella and Fred. And she's quite clingy. I mentioned in Monday's video the loss of Sirius, and I think that's why I'm doing black and white today. I only just thought of it, maybe subconscious. Just being careful on the back that those little flippy ends aren't disappearing. But she's now asleep on the little sofa behind me. And she's not snoring, but she's going like that every now and then, crying a little bit in her sleep. So I'm just crossing my previous stitching lines wherever I happen to cross them. And it's nice how the feeling of the whole thing changes when you stitch, even though it's a little bit more rigid because of the paper. There is a kind of change in the texture. It is giving it a bit of extra structure. I don't know if you can hear her now. Oops. Yeah, it made a little cross there, but just by chance. I didn't do it on purpose. Jump across. Oops, don't pull it too tight or that happens. Come back the other way. I thought so. You just feel sometimes when you pull through that it's not pulled through as it should. And you look on the back and there's a great big loop. So we had quite a week last week, and Hans has gone off to work. So this week, to keep myself busy, apart from all the usual things that I do, well, I've got extra videos to make as well, so I'm happy about that, because a week tomorrow for you, so a week on Thursday, I'm going to England for the exhibition, and I'm going for 10 days, so I'll be stewarding for 2 days. I'll be stewarding on Thursday the 10th of May and Sunday the 12th of May, which will be the last day, and then the exhibition will come down. So I'll be in the gallery in those 2 days. And then after that, the Wednesday after that, we've got our CQ West group meeting. And that will be our first meeting, myself and my 2 friends and colleagues, Chrissy and Stephanie. as joint chairs. Although we have all been chair before individually. We only recently became joint chair. I talked about it in a little video I did last time I went to England. So that's exciting and momentous. I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, so before I go, before I toddle off, I will make some videos in advance. So there'll be 2 Mondays and a Wednesday that I'll be away. And I've got a few ideas, or a couple of ideas. Well, I have several ideas. I make it up as I go along. You've probably noticed. But the Mondays, you know, I don't have somewhere written down a list of every week for the whole year, what I'm going to do week by week. But I do have a little list of things that just come into my head, and I think, oh, I must do that one week, or I must do that, you know. So I do have a little list of those things to draw on if one week I think, I'm not exactly sure. But usually something happens in the week, or I come across something, or I see something, or a thought comes in my head, and that spurs me or inspires me for the Monday and the Wednesday and the Wonky Wednesday. But I do have, yeah, excuse me, a little list of ideas. So I probably will draw on that for a couple of the couple of Mondays that I'm not here. And I will also do a video tour of the exhibition itself. And show you all that, all those of you who can't get to Nailsworth in Gloucestershire in the UK. Did I get another loop? No, I'm okay. And one more line of black, one more stitch on this line. I'm much happier now it's stitched. Get one more stitch on the end, maybe. It's a little one. I never really trust glue. I think that's just my experience, you know, my own lack of experience gluing, although I have been making journals and from old books and so forth for some little while, and doing collage with paper and things like that. I'm by no means an expert at that. I wouldn't class myself an expert with cloth either. I'm just, you know, it's just experience, isn't it? And you learn from working, you work with things and you see how they respond, and that's how you learn. And it's a bit awkward down the middle because you can't really fold it up in your hand the same as you can when it's just cloth. Now that's another thing to observe. This is only a small piece, but if you wanted to make a great big piece, you might have to think about that when you planned how you stitched it. The reason I went with odd numbers was to make it symmetrical, you know, an odd number of strips, so that there's a centre strip, so that there's a centre square, but also so that the unders and overs on the edges are the same on opposite sides. Does that make sense? That's why I went for odd number of strips. I didn't explain that at the beginning. Whoops. Okay, nearly there with the black. And then I couldn't find, well, I have got cream thread, but it all seems to be downstairs. So what I've gone with has got a slight pinkish tinge to it, but then the tea dyeing's got a slight pinkish tinge. So I laid it on and auditioned it and decided it looked fine. And that'll do, pig. And I'm in cloth there, so I can just do my normal thing of a couple of back stitches. I never bothered doing the loopy knot on these arty pieces. On a piece that was going to get wear and tear and use, and certainly something that was going to go into the washing or whatever, then I would do the loopy, you know, through the loop, pull up the knot, bury the end, proper thing. Right, you see it's got a pinky tinge, but it goes okay. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing now on the with the cream strips, I think. So only where there's a cream strip, so I'm not going to stitch any cream here. Right, I'm going to start that end, and then I end up in the right place. I learned, you see, I learned. I observed and I learned. At least for this piece, that must have happened to me before numerous times, and the learning didn't. What's that? Something stuck to my finger. Something stuck to the glue on my finger. Oh, yeah, apparently the learning didn't last for that. But I kind of really make I mean, I do some planning, obviously. You can't get away with no planning whatsoever a lot of the time. But you learn, there's that expression, isn't there, that you learn by your mistakes. I'm not sure it's mistakes. I think you learn by experimenting. You learn by what-ifing, is a nice way of putting it. You know, when you just go, what if I did that? And when you say what if, you're asking a question, so then it's a good thing to listen to the answer, and the answer comes from the materials and how they respond to what you're doing. And this is slightly thicker thread, so I'm noticing that it's a little bit harder to get through, but I didn't want to get a big-eyed needle. I always like to use the smallest needle I can get away with, whatever I'm stitching. Certainly with paper, if you used a bigger-eyed needle, you'd make a bigger hole, so your thread would go through more easily, but then the hole would be more visible. So that's just something to take into consideration. So even though I'm stab stitching and not doing the usual in and out, it's quite pleasurable to do. I hope if you try it that you like it as well. That little pop sound it makes as it goes through the paper. There's no reason why you couldn't make journal covers using this kind of thing. Would be lovely for that, I think. I'm going to hop across. You know, including paper elements with your cloth, if you made a journal with a cloth cover. Or you could make woven pieces like this with cloth and paper, and then glue them onto a hard cover if you're using an old book cover or cardboard covers. And I'm just doing this simple stitching here, but I think it would also look really cool if you did heavier stitching. You went through and after you've done the lines through the middle and everything's held together firmly, not by the glue that we don't trust, that I don't trust. You could go back and put stitching either side as well, you know, just more stitching. I do think if I was doing more stitching I wouldn't necessarily use this black craft card. The sketchbook paper is nice, but it was just the only thing I could find that was black. Oops. And I notice, to me, now looking at it under my light here, the The black is a definite black. When I looked back at the first bit that I filmed while I was waiting for the glue to dry, it looks more brownish on my screen anyway. It's interesting how colour's affected by screens and things, even by light, you know. Well, colour is only visible light. I talked about that last week when we did the hexy colour wheel. If you go out in the dusk, everything's grey, isn't it? So I think if I was stitching only this sketchbook paper and this cloth, I would be tempted to stitch in and out and not stab stitch. And I haven't put my little red square on yet. I'm going to put that on over the top. Jump across. Yeah, I'm a little bit... well, the glue is drying. I think those last little dots I can see are just not completely dry, maybe, because I can't see it everywhere. If you're worried about the glue you're using and that happening, then the best thing would be to put a little dab on the cloth you want to use, let it dry and see if you can see it through from the other side. It's feeling quite sturdy now, it's been stitched both ways. I think my little red square, I'm just going to simply stitch it on. I don't think I'm going to glue it on. See when I get there. My head is not coming into shot. It seems my head feels awfully close to the camera. Not sure I've got it set up completely how I still think I haven't got it right after I took it all downstairs to make the onion skin dyeing video a few weeks ago. Anyway, I hope it's okay, that you don't keep just seeing the top of my head. Apologies if you do. Last line of stitching. Have I got enough thread? I think I'll just get away with it, and then that's through the middle again. But I feel happier holding this now because it's stitched. It feels, it's got more substance to it. And in fact the other way, the way the cloth is, you can concertina. So you see you could fold that even. If you made a bigger piece and you wanted to make it a book cover from it, you could make a little book like that and have that as the spine. How cute would that be? I might make it more of a rectangle than a square so you didn't have such a tall thin book, but yeah. You could play with it as a concertina. If you follow Machteld at A Daily Dose of Paper. I haven't yet had a chance to watch her video. She's been working on a concertina book with stitching and paper. So I'm going to do that this afternoon. I think I'm going to treat myself and go and sit and watch Machteld doing that. And it's just, yeah, I can feel the way this folds because the cloth is more flexible than the paper. It's just nice the way it folds that way. I could imagine concertinaing it. into some kind of book form. I'm nearly there. I'm hoping my thread doesn't run out. Woo! Yeah, one strand's come unthreaded. I don't dare trim the end to make it easier to thread because there's hardly. Right, do you know what? I'm going to have to take a bigger needle, the one with glue on, just to do those last couple of stitches. There we go. And breathe. Just hold your breath when you're doing something to concentrate. Go back through the same hole. Can I get one more stitch? Just, there we go. If I can just get one little back stitch into anchor it, I'll be happy enough. There we go, that'll do. That'll do, pig. Donkey. Right. So there we are. You see, it's really a nice form to fold and play with. That way it doesn't bend so much because that paper, you know, and paper, if you bend it, it folds, doesn't it? And then it mark stays. But you see, with the cloth, you can really manipulate it. You could even make a vessel. If you made a longer piece and made it into a circular thing, you know, a cylinder, and then did something for a base. Yeah, I think that warrants further exploration. But anyway, I'm going to put that on there. Got this tiny bit of red. I think I'm just going to do one cross in the middle, just to hold that little red square in place. If I can only thread my needle. Right. Yeah, well, it's tiny, this bit of thread. I don't even know why it was in the aughts. It should have, you know, the aughts that I stitch with, not the aughts that get used for stuffing and whatever. I'm just going to come through. I'm actually going to do a guide hole just so my X is somewhat where I want it. I just poked a hole through. And then I'm just going to jump over there on the diagonal. And now I need a guide hole, but I can't get around with my needle anymore. Could get another needle. But I'm just going to poke around apparently. There we go. It's alright, it's good enough. And there's my half square. And it's, you know, I've gone quite a distance away from log cabin, but I still think I'm within the realms of, if it's important to anybody, that it's log cabin related. There are other things that are very log cabin that I still want to do, but I just felt like doing this week, so I went for it. There we go. And this little scrap of red's got this nice little fringe on it. I'm quite pleased with that. I'm going to put it in my journal, my log cabin journal. See, that was the first one with the paper and the completely different look, but still strips of paper and strips of cloth. I marked the page, that was sensible of me. There we go. Actually, it belongs on that page, not the paper page. So I think what I'm going to do is put it on the paper page and come back to that page, because I think I'm going to stick it on with a bit of. I could use that glue. Shall I use that glue? I was going to put it on with a bit of masking tape, but I think I'll use this glue. This glue's got another end. with a bigger applicator. No, I don't want to glue. I don't know, just because it's there. No, I'm going to stitch it on. Excuse me prevaricating. Changing my mind. Not what prevaricating means, is it? Let's use this to stitch it on with. Yeah, I like it, and I like it that way up as well, which I didn't really give any thought to, but I should have done, maybe. But anyway, it's turned out okay, because I like the fringe at the bottom. That seems to make sense, the fringe on that bit of red. So I like it with the dark there and the light there. It is, you know, I can see the log cabin connection. Where am I going to stitch it? I'm going to stitch it. See, what I could have done if I'd thought ahead was not put that line of stitching in and use that line of stitching to attach it to the page. But I didn't think ahead, so do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do some little... I don't want to do that. It's because the needle's got a bigger eye, see, it pulled right through. Be gentle. Right. Just going to do some a little extra line through that. I'm still in shot. I felt like I've crept away because of the journal. So yeah, if you didn't want the extra line of stitching, then factor it into your top stitching. If you want to stitch it into your journal. And you see it's slightly too big for the page because it ended up bigger than the 5 1/4 inches it was meant to be. So it's sticking out a bit, but it doesn't matter. When I make journals and books, I always like the pages to stick out a bit here and there. It's kind of so when it's closed, you have all those lovely edges. Nearly there. It's quite striking. Black and cream, and then the red. Yeah, that black craft paper combined with the glue is quite tricky. So I'm giving the needle a little wiggle just to help it on its way, because I don't wear a thimble. I don't get on with thimbles. I like thimbles as objects. But I just could never get on with stitching with one. Right. Last one. There we see, I don't mind that extra line. I think it's just a little element of surprise. I have many, many ways to justify my decisions or lack of decisions. Whoops. And when I've made my knot, which I don't think you can see, maybe just, leave that dangling. There we go. So that is Wonky Wednesday, a little log cabin inspired, shall we call it, weave, with paper and cloth. So I hope you like that, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more Cloth Tales. Bye bye.